I'm here with Karine Vinchon, who is the perfumer behind Celadon, which is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And thank you for making some time to chat with me about it today. Miller Harris have presented a really interesting challenge, I think, to the perfumer here. There's just one page of text, and in this case, it's The Dream of the Red Chamber, which is an ancient Chinese text, I think.
Yeah.
So you're presented with quite, I guess, quite an obscure art form here, quite an obscure piece of work. What did it bring out in you? What did it make you think? And it'd be great if you could kind of describe the fragrance and what your response to The Dream of the Red Chamber was.
Yes. Firstly, Dream of the Red Chambers is one of the great novels in the Chinese literature. So it was important for me to put some elements from China, because I have to put this element. It was very essential for me. So I use, for example, the cinnamon from Celadon.
Right.
I use smoky tea inside.
Yes.
I use mate.
Mate, great.
So many reference to the China.
Yeah.
Verbena too. And the text speaks about white flowers. So I choose the magnolia, because it's one of the symbol for me of China.
So the text in this case, there is some specifics about certain raw materials that are mentioned, aren't there? And you've managed to incorporate them so beautifully. It'd be great. Just tell me a bit more about some of the raw materials that are in Celadon.
In the text, we can read, for example, very often the grass, the jade stone. So I use many green nuts.
Yes.
For example, I put some tomato leaves inside.
Should we have a smell?
Yes, of course. So it's something very fresh. I use galbanum too, to have this very green impact.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Such a sort of refreshing, crisp quality, isn't it?
Exactly, because in the text we can read also about the dewy rose. So I put something like that, very
condensation in the water. Yeah,
exactly. And you have it's about the rain too. So I use many ozonic and aquatic notes inside.
And that tomato leaf comes across really well, doesn't it? It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Have you ever been to China?
Never. No, not yet.
Me neither.
But I would like.
Did you know the text? Was it something you knew about?
No, before that, no.
Yeah, I have to say it wasn't one I knew either.
But it was very inspiring, because it's very, there are many descriptions inside, because it's a very comprehensive text.
And the actual work it's a fictional place. It isn't necessarily a specific place in China. Is that right?
In this text?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's an imaginary place rather than a real place in China.
Exactly. But I like it because, I like to have some abstraction in the structure of a perfume.
Yeah.
I like to paint too.
Oh, do you?
Yes. And I began by the figurative paint, but now I prefer the abstract art, because it's more liberator, something very instinctive, and I like to do it with perfume too.
Yeah.
So I like when it's not a real place.
Right.
We can imagine everything.
So you can let your own imagination run riot. And do you imagine Celadon being worn at a certain time of year? When do you think people would wear it?
I think we can wear it all the year, but it's something more fresh, I would say. So for the spring and for the summer, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect.
It's funny, isn't it? We don't, we shouldn't always be so prescriptive about times of year, but sometimes we do tend to go for the sort of greener, lighter fragrances in the spring and summer. But obviously, people can do whatever they like. But yeah, I mean, I can really imagine this would be such a beautiful fragrance, in the kind of in the warmer months, because of this. It's so beautiful and there's a cooling quality to it as well, I think, isn't there? It would feel quite refreshing on the skin.
Yes, exactly.
And can you tell me about some of the naturals that are in this fragrance?
So I use the verbena.
Right.
Yes. I add some tuberose, as I said. And in the text, it's about also purity.
Yeah.
And whiteness. So I use some lavender to have this sensation of purity.
And when you're creating a fragrance like this, do you have a person in mind? Like who would you envisage wearing Celadon? Is it helpful to you to think about someone when you're doing it, or is it not really part of it?
Not really, in fact, because I think the perfume is something very personal. And so I don't like to have a gender in mind or something like that, because, since I'm a teenager, I wear very often masculine perfume, but I don't mind, in fact. If I like it, I wear it, and it becomes your perfume.
And smell shouldn't really have a gender, should they? We should be able to wear what we want.
I less and less work with the gender in mind. I prefer to have an idea of a story to tell, and after people appropriate themselves this story.
Yeah. And when Miller Harris came with this idea of creating a fragrance based on text and that art form of literature, is that something that you responded to really? Is that something that kind of works for you as a way of doing it?
Yes, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it because words are very inspired. So only one word can be 100 different perfumes,
Yeah.
So it's I like to start from a word and after to create a scent around this word.
Yeah.
So in this text I took some specific words, and I have a very simple structure at the beginning, and after I add many things to have something more aesthetic at the end.
Right. I think it's almost a form of magic sometimes, sort of bringing one art form and bringing it into another like this, and actually adding another art form like literature to fragrance can be really helpful, I think, because sometimes, when we just talk about raw materials or ingredients, sometimes I think for the customer it can be hard, when there's certain words we don't understand. But if you can add another art form and talk about a novel or a film or
very complementary.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even paintings, things like that. It's I think it can be really helpful. So
and I think it's quite the same way to create. The writer as words.
Yeah.
And he writes stories.
Yeah.
And we have raw materials.
Yes.
And we built a story too. So
that's true.
It's the same
and
way
I guess,
of creation.
And there's infinite numbers of possibilities, and everything that you create would be different in the same way as writing. It's everything's created is unique. It was interesting when looking at the text, and there was a lot of descriptive words there that would help you, I guess, as a perfumer. But I guess almost you could say there could have been too much. So I wonder how you edited down that all the different stimuli that were there. How did you create a kind of balanced fragrance? Because I guess if you sort of threw all those different things into the pot, it might have created something quite different. But this is so beautifully balanced and well done. How did you approach that sort of editing process?
I understand what you mean, because it's true that the text is very complex and
there's quite a lot going on,
many descriptions, etc.
Yeah.
But it's my job to do something very well balanced. So that's why I try, in this case, to do some links between the different raw materials.
Right.
For example, when I use the green nuts and the red fruit, I thought about the tomato leaves, because you have the red fruit and the green nuts. So you have only to put one effect to have already this both
That's so clever. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, sort of ways of sort of linking the two things with one ingredient.
To have in the finished product, not something too complex and something that people will not understand, because the aim is to obtain something very pleasant and very aesthetic, and
I suppose that's part of the art of what you do, and working with Miller Harris. There's a natural kind of editing process anyway of different versions where this one might need a bit more of something, and you end up with any kind of art form. You start at one place and you end up somewhere else, and generally it's about refining and taking away sometimes, isn't it?
Yes, it's the more difficult to do.
Yeah,
to remove something. Yes.
Yeah.
But of course we do it also. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And because it's very important for me that the message has to be clear.
Yes. Yeah. And holding on to that idea of what's the central message of this fragrance. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's absolutely beautiful, and thank you for taking the time to describe it for me today.
Thank you.